Today, I'm filming a beautiful $4.5 million house using the brand new Laowa 12mm T2.9 0D Cine lens, and we're gonna find out if this is the best lens for real estate videography. I've been using this 12mm lens for the past month, and I thought what better way to show you what this lens is capable of than at this spectacular home. While we're here, I'm gonna show you how I shoot with this lens as well as walk you through some of its features. So with that all said, let's get into shooting the property. So the first thing to note about this lens is that it's full manual, meaning your aperture or t-stop and your focus are controlled by rings on the exterior of the lens. Now, a lot of us are used to coming from autofocus lenses where we don't have to really worry about the shot being in focus or not. But I'm going to show you how to correctly set focus on a manual lens for shooting real estate. So what I'm going to do, first thing, I turn my focus peaking on. This is the most important step. This way I can see exactly what's in and out of focus. So right now you can see the shot is obviously out of focus. I found that the sweet spot for this lens is between 0 and about 3 feet, or you can see on this side between 0 and 1 meters. So now you can see as I turn this, I can see my focus peaking guide, but everything is great and in focus. Now I'm gonna kind of get ready, set my composition. You can see that we can see so much of the space. That's what I love about this 12mm, but here's the shot. There you go. Now the great thing about this lens is that you don't actually have to worry about things being out of focus because it's so wide. Even though it's so wide, it's T2.9, the shot is going to stay perfectly in focus for the whole time. So there is an example of how I would shoot a wide straight push shot, but I also want to show you how I would compose and shoot a wide curved push shot. Now, the wonderful thing about this lens is it's so wide, you get to see so much of the house, so much of the space in the lens. And so it's all about filling the frame and finding a good composition. So you can see here, I'm gonna be curving into the kitchen over there, but I still have in this third, I have it filled with the table and the wine rack back there. And in this third, I have that nice hallway, which gives me a lot of depth. And I wanna keep those in those thirds as I'm curving through. So I have my focus set again between infinity and 3 feet. I'm gonna get ready and I'm gonna start curving around. You can see that composition stays even all the way through. And that's just what I love about this lens. It's so wide, you can see so much of the space, and it's just incredible for real estate. Now, arguably the best feature about this lens is that it's zero distortion, meaning that at 12mm, the lines are going to be perfectly straight. There's going to be no sort of warping on the edges. And you can see that in my shot right here, the lines on this stairwell straight, and on the door frame straight, and all the way to the edges, there's no warping whatsoever, which means I can get some really cool tilting shots and really show the vertical expansion of some spaces without having to worry about it getting twisted or warped out of perspective. So I'm going to show you what that looks like here using this staircase. So as I curve and tilt, you can see that everything is staying nice and perfectly straight, which is very important for real estate as we want to keep those verticals and lines perfect. Now, the really cool part about having a lens this wide at 12mm is that you can get really creative with this lens. You don't always have to shoot the wide shots of spaces. You can look for unique and creative ways to utilize this lens, such as kind of this shot that I found here in the wine rack. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tilt my camera close to all the way up. I don't know, maybe like 45 degrees upwards. And I'm gonna get all the way up to the top of the wine rack and get this really cool reveal shot. And that's just the beauty of this lens with the 12mm, is that you can get so creative with it. And that's just one of the many reasons why I love this lens. Now for real estate, you want to make sure that you're making the house or space look really large and inviting. And sometimes it can be tricky when you come across those smaller or narrower spaces, such as this closet. But with a 12mm lens, that's no problem. We can make it look nice and big. So here's what that shot can look like. So as you can see, this lens makes shooting smaller spaces just that easy. So that's a wrap on today's shoot. Here's just a few more examples of some shots I was able to capture with the 12mm lens. But with that all said, let's head back to the studio and go over some more of the specs and features. Okay, before I get into everything, I do need to mention that this video is not sponsored by Laowa, and I have not been paid to say anything about this lens. This video is just my own opinions after using this lens for about a month. So with that out of the way, let's get into the finer details. There's been a lot of hype and debate recently in the real estate videographer community about ultra wide lenses, kind of specifically that more 10 to 12mm focal range. And now we have the ability to have a 12mm Cine lens, which is designed specifically for creating beautiful video footage, as well as it's such a small form factor. This is such a powerful piece of equipment, and I really think this might be a game changer. Now, I briefly mentioned this earlier, but this is actually a full manual lens. Both your focus and your aperture, or your t-stop, are actually adjusted manually using these rings on the exterior of the lens. It definitely took some getting used to my first few times using the lens, as I was coming from a lens that has autofocus and digital aperture control. But now that I've become adjusted to using the rings, I kind of like it. I don't know if I prefer it over kind of the digital or automatic setup, but it really hasn't affected my efficiency or workflow in any way. It hasn't slowed me down at all, which I really appreciate. Obviously, a big pro of having a manual focus lens is that you don't have to worry about any autofocus hunting. Now, most cameras have really good autofocus, but sometimes you get to a house or you get in a room and your autofocus can seem to jump around, and sometimes you don't even notice it until you get into the editing bay. You're looking at your footage and you're like, oh, this shot is out of focus. So having that manual focus control gives you that peace of mind that your shots are going to be in focus every single time. Now, a lot of people may have the question or concern, like, well, if this is a manual focus lens, if I'm moving or getting my shots, will my shot be out of focus because my camera can't automatically adjust for how I'm moving? And that's actually not quite true. You can set the focus, and because the lens is so wide, as you're moving, as you're getting your shots, it's still going to be in focus. You've got such a wide field of view where the aperture, or actually depth of field, won't really change much, even as you go from maybe one side of the room all the way to the other. What's nice about wide angle manual lenses is that with your focus, you can kind of just set it and forget it. As for the aperture, or for Cine lenses, the t-stop, that ring is going to give you much more refined control when you're adjusting your t-stop, especially if you're using it to adjust your exposure. Now let's talk about the build quality of this lens. Now this lens is fully metal. It feels like quality. It is built very, very well. And these rings are so smooth. I mean, it's fun to just slide them around. I mean, like, they move like butter.
They move so smooth and it just elevates that, again, high quality feeling. Now, what I think makes this lens so powerful is its form factor. I mean, this is a Cine lens and it is smaller and lighter than my 15-35. Having a lens that can produce such incredible footage, it's so sharp, you get this superb image quality out of it in such a small form factor. It becomes so convenient. You can fit it on a gimbal, no problem, right? Probably even the mini gimbals, because again, this is not a very heavy lens and you can just kind of fit it in your camera bag. You don't need a big box to carry it around. It comes with a really nice hard case, but you don't need that to carry it around. You could fit it in your camera bag. Again, just toss it on a gimbal. It's a very convenient lens to use, not very heavy, so you're not going to fatigue as quick either. A super cool and underrated feature of this lens is that it actually has a 77mm filter thread. Most Cine lenses don't have screw-on filter threads. If you wanted to use a filter, you would have to get a big matte box setup, which is definitely not ideal for run and gun real estate filming, especially if you're using a gimbal. However, this lens gives you that ability to use your traditional screw-on filters if you need to use them, which just kind of continues to add on to the convenience and versatility of this lens. As you can see from the footage I've been able to capture, this lens is going to give you a superb image quality, and I am truly impressed with the capabilities of this lens. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about this lens? And will you be picking one up for yourself?